Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, Hellions, issue number 8. This was an amazing issue, and I've got nothing but praise for this issue, which means the like counter is probably going to skyrocket in this one, is what it is. I'm going to tell you why I like this comic book so much. Why, even if you didn't like this comic book, you should still be giving an awful lot of praise to it. This is one of those exceptional comic books that comes out that just surprises everyone, or at least it should. All right, let's get talking about this. This issue is called the Grinning Neonate. I wonder if that's not the name of the character that first appears in this issue. Written by Zeb Wells, art by Steven Scovia. The colors are by David Curiel, letters and production by VC's Ariana Maher, who is taking over letters in the Marvel Comics, it seems. Design, Tom Mueller. Cover art by Steven Segovia and Romulo Fiora Jr. And the head of X is Jonathan Hickman. And what's this thing down here? This was directed by Taika Waititi. That's interesting. And it's actually, like, I mean that joke sincerely, because, you know, the first time that I saw Thor Ragnarok in the movie theater, you remember the days when we could all go to movie theaters and not worry about stuff? Yeah. Except, you know, how healthy is that butter-like topping on the popcorn? I remember watching the movie and just thinking to myself, dude, please stop telling jokes in this movie because it's getting to be too much and it's going to ruin the movie. Okay, no, that joke actually succeeded. That one landed well, but stop telling jokes because it's starting to get really bad. Okay, that joke actually worked. Fine, fine. But stop telling jokes. And pretty soon I'm just like, you know what, whatever. Who cares? Because this movie is just amazing. And every joke, while it seems like it was too many jokes, it landed. And while I understand there's going to be a lot of people who are just like, you know, actually not that many people who are going to be like, I didn't like that movie at all. Your opinion is very, very valid. But, you know, much like some people think that theft is okay, but the majority of people have voted that theft is a bad thing. In our society, most people have said that Thor Ragnarok was an amazing movie. So there's that. Not to take away from your tastes, but most people's tastes say that it was good. And that's important. And here also, because this book just kept on hitting you with jokes, sometimes at the most inopportune moments, yet it was made funny. It was made funny because, like, the understanding of these characters in ways that I personally would never even consider, right? I'm not a huge Hellions fan from back in the day when Emma Frost was in charge of the group and blah, 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 whatever. I really just didn't care too much about the group. It didn't speak to me. This does. This new version of X-Force, right? It's like, for the dirty deeds that no one wants to know about, you call X-Force. For the ones that even they don't want to handle, you call the Hellions. Like, this is the A team of A teams right here, you know? Zeb Wells has the ability to take a character like Empath, who has no business being in this book, because it's important to understand that Cameron Hodge does not appear in this issue. If you're looking at the pages, the preview pages of this, and saying, wait a second, but I see Cameron Hodge right there. He even says his name is Cameron Hodge. Like, that's Cameron Hodge. You clearly didn't read this book. And there's going to be spoilers in this book. I would recommend that you just go and read this book and then come back to the review to see through some of the amazing walls that were built in this issue just to be kicked down. I'm going on from here. That was your cue to leave. So for those of us who have read the book, I thought it was amazing that here's this character, Empath, who has no business being here because there are no human minds for him to control. And he recognized that. He's like, dude, I'm out of here. Like, I can't help you guys here. You know what I'm saying? And he just, like, he books it. Like, there is an empath-shaped cloud where he used to be, and the pitter-patter of his feet running the opposite direction. Freaking Grey Crow, but I still love the name Scalp Hunter. It's a badass name, but freaking Grey Crow, he's just like, we got a runner. Like, this is great. And everybody's just like, let him go. Because even Quinnan, who can't really use her powers, at least she can jump around and try and, you know, draw fire and stuff like that. What the hell is Empath going to do? That's what every single one of us were saying, right? And yet, Zeb Wells found a way to make this guy, Empath, the MVP by using his power that cannot be used and was not used effectively to be the most important moment in the entire comic book. Well, as far as the fighting is concerned. Damn, that was amazing. That was like when he's like, I can't believe you did that. I was dying, dude. This was amazing. This was amazing. Later on, first off, later on when Greycrow, who just got finished killing someone, comes up and says, okay, you're saying that these AI have to be destroyed. They have to die. She's like, die? Do you think that they're alive? He's like, yeah, it seems that way. They're AI, right? Her nature, her nurturing nature is referred to again. It was referred to earlier as a weakness, as a distraction, like she's easily distracted by her nurturing nature. So, hey, we can get a hit off on her. But that weakness is turned into an incredible strength in this that I think would make Brian Edward Hill very proud. You know what I'm saying? Of the way that this character, Quanon, is being used right now. When she says, I know that everybody has used you before as the person who kills. I know you think that this is just what needs to be done and you're the one who's supposed to do it. But you don't have to be that person. And I know that's not the person who you are. I know that's not the person who you want to be. It doesn't have to be mission first for you. I can do this. I thought that was the other really powerful moment in this comic book. It was so serious. And yet, here comes the jokes on the other side where Havoc was just like, I have it from friend of a friend, that would be Madeline Pryor, that you didn't even have a sexy demon to trick you into stuff. You had a fangs and brimstone demon tricking you into doing such and such and such. Like, you evil. There was no lust involved here. Maybe a lust for power. I thought that was impressive because here you have these robots who are on the cusp of self-realization, and they basically have a self-friend moment. Yeah, these guys were basically about to be on the level of Warlock with, mutant scum equals friend. It was a beautiful moment. And then, to translate Krakoan, my data burns. Wow. But Wells has a way of... See, back in the day, the first real Marvel and DC crossover was Spider-Man, Superman. And Dr. Octopus was the main villain in that one. And there was a scene in there where Dr. Octopus was able to get away from Spider-Man, but not really. Spider-Man was able to whip a little spider tracer on him. And they show later on, and they do a close-up of a scene where it's like, oh, look, there was a spider. He shot a spider tracer at this particular moment. I'm like, no, he didn't. I was like, what was I, 5 when I read that? Maybe I was 7, but whatever. I went back, the page or two before, and I saw it. I'm like, holy crap, it was there. And I didn't see it. It was drawn that the spider tracer went over. And that's clearly a spider tracer. It's not just like a little dot or something. Like, holy crap. And I didn't see it. Like, I failed my perception roll. Well, ever since then, I've been pumping points into my intuition because, I ain't going to let stuff like that pass me no more. That's one of the reasons why, if you want to do a comic book that I particularly am going to gush over, you will do a comic book where there's things that you present, but there's a whole bunch of good stuff happening back here, and all you got to do is be like, bam, and knock that one out of the way to be able to see it. You got to see through the debauchery that they put up, this veil, see through the veil. I love those kinds of books. Always get my juices flowing, all of my juices flowing. Wow. Desk rises off the table, like hovers off the table, off the floor. Really great moments, and Zeb Wells does a great job of doing that with story, not even just with art. So impressive, most impressive. Darth Vader moment there. I appreciate how the very last breath, I guess you could say, that the robot says, because Here's the data burn. He's going to die. He's technically dead now, but he's able to breathe one last breath. And what he says in that breath is that I was wrong. Mutants are not friends. It seems like it's just a sad moment where it's dying and like that's its last thought. But you got to wonder, does that go into their, like, does that realization go into a hive mind idea? Shouldn't matter if all of those are dead, but should it matter if there's still one that remains? Namely, what Nanny picks up at the end. I'm very interested in what that little, I guess that's going to be the neon, is that one going to be called Neonate from the title of this book? It's a possibility. I'm wow, I'm flabbergasted by all of the behind the scenes in this issue. Namely, for me, you got to think about this with Kevin Feige, and I talked about this a little bit in my Eternals review, which I'm not going to get into it a lot here. I'm simply going to point out that according to Disney's own released documents, Kevin Feige does have some level of control over, we don't know how much, over the comic books. So with that being the case, is that one of the reasons why Hickman was signed on to do the X-Men? Is that one of the reasons why Hickman said the only way to do what we need to do with the X-Men is to completely reboot them? Because the X-Men haven't been heroes lately. None of the mutants have, for the most part, been heroic lately. I mean, even Glob, who walked away when there was a clear and evident beating going on with a fellow mutant. You know what I'm saying? He's just like, yeah, I'm just going to leave and act like I didn't see this stuff. Wouldn't Glob usually be the person who's like, I got to go tell somebody and do the right thing and then go back to my gardening, right? This is something that I'm noticing. So I'm wondering, is this going to cross over? Is the purpose they're doing this because when the mutants are introduced in the movies, that they're not necessarily going to be the good guys? They're not going to be the heroes that we recognize from the Claremont days or the Lee and Kirby days of the comics or any of those other runs, right? Is that what we're seeing? Is that the reason why this is happening? I'm not sure, but food for thought, I'm saying. Either way, when excuse me, when you have these characters, and let me actually try and find one of these important parts here. Towards the end, what is this called? The Hesiod Protocol. When you read the top of it, it says no anti-mutant AI can be suffered to survive. But think about what Charles says down here, and then Quanon herself says, oh, actually just over here and over here. No AI can be tolerated to achieve self-awareness. So what does that say about Machine Man, Jocasta, Herbie, Vision, the original Human Torch? Probably the first one that's going to concern would be Albert, right? An LCD. I wonder if there's going to be a conversation around those characters soon, because they are technically AIs. I wonder if this is going to change because when you think about the relationship that the X characters have with Scarlet Witch and the whole Great Pretender thing, she is an Avenger, right? A character who, by necessity, is going to be bigger and larger in the comic books because she's going to be bigger and larger in the MCU in just a week or so with the WandaVision thing coming out. With her being so closely associated with the Vision, who is the premier AI in Marvel. I wonder. Plus, technically, isn't Warlock AI? So how's this going to affect their relationship with him? Is this the reason why he was hiding at first? And did something happen why he's out because he's technically a mutant in the... Like, it's the whole thing is just really weird. and it opens nothing but questions for me. Literally, I'm looking at this Zeb Wells book the same way that I would look at the Hoxpox books when they came out, when I'm trying to decipher code, when I'm trying to see beyond or behind the veneer that they're putting up for us as a distraction. When I'm seeing what's really going on. I'm actually trying to see who is the man behind the curtain. Wizard of Oz reference there. And one of the biggest distractions that I see is actually the art. Let's start talking about Steven Scovia. Scovia is a guy who a lot of people have been sleeping on, and admittedly, even though I've been mentioning how good Segovia's art is, I didn't realize how much I was sleeping on him also. I'm not going to put him in the same category as a Gene Colan or a Steve Ditko or a Jack Kirby, but I'm going to put him clearly in the same conversation. Everybody was known for their own ability to do things. Gene Colan had the ability to take motion and move it in a way like a single panel with multiple images of the same character showing the movement of the character. Just look at his Tomb of Dracula work and his Daredevil work. And one of the cool things to notice about Colan's work is that while you could see the clear movement of a character doing something, like case in point, if you're familiar with the martial arts, the spinning back fist, it's a dangerous move because any move where you turn your back to your opponent, you take your eyes, even for a millisecond, a hair's breadth off of your opponent, is the moment where you could wind up getting, the equivalent of a sucker punch. It's the punch you don't see coming. That's the most dangerous punch or attack that you're ever going to receive, which is why the spinning back fist, a feint, an actualized feint, is such an impressive move, right? It's not necessarily about delivering that power. It's about hitting you with a punch that shouldn't be able to come from that arm, from that hand, from that direction and be effective. And yet it is effective now. The momentum is just a happy, excess. But if Colan were to ever, and I've never seen him actually do a spinning back punch, but if he were to do that, there would be the part where he would recognize this, where the part where the attacker has to take his or her eyes off of the opponent will be the part where it will seem like a single moment has been skipped. You will often see in the Daredevil comics that Colan did that the movement, the fluidic movement, seems interrupted at one point. And it's always the point where that's where the snap is. That's where the movement that has to be the fastest part of that movement, has to be, which always has to be the moment where you're taking your eyes, where you're actually doing the spin, because you're turning and then you snap your head around like this to complete the punch, the strike, right? That moment where the head would be spun, that would be the scene in the panel, the motion that would be skipped to show the speed, right? Like slowing down Bruce Lee's attacks in the movies because the camera just can't see. It's just a blur of motion, dude. You're way too fast for the technology that we have at this time. Jack Kirby had a way of showing punches, or showing the impact of punches way more than it could possibly happen. Like when Captain America threw a wallop on someone and you saw somebody's spine snap in half because like they just completely doubled over like that, it was more about Kirby was very smart. This was later in his years, actually in the prime of his years of art, because this wasn't in the beginning when he would start drawing. He recognized that you can, and for him, he should, sacrifice anatomy in order to show how powerful a punch was. I will sacrifice the target's anatomy in order to show how powerful Captain America or whoever's punch was. And that's impressive to do. And that leads into Ditko, who, when he was drawing Spider-Man specifically, and sometimes the Creeper, he would make these characters go into really ridiculous poses in order to show what they were capable of, because these are superhumans, which is one of the reasons why when people who are clearly not comic book fans and don't recognize comic book art for what it is, its own art form, and they say, like, oh, they have this image of Spider-Woman where they just want to show her butt and her boobs and stuff like that. So they have her twist in ways that aren't even human. She's not a regular human. She's altered, and she has the ability to contort her body like no normal person would. So trying to get a normal person to do these things, even though it's shown that these women can actually twist in these terms if they're actually in shape, it's interesting to see the crybaby attitude of some of these people. Like, hello, it's very valid to have Spider-Woman drawn that way, just like it's valid to have Spider-Man drawn in ways like no human, no regular non-spider powered altered human can stick to a wall that way and turn their bodies that way. Like, you're dislocating your body to do the things that Ditko had Spider-Man do. But we looked at it and we recognized it for what it was. Hell, I wonder if these people, it's not even just comic book art. I wonder if these people who complained about the Spider-Woman image have ever seen Picasso. Morons. Wells isn't in that category of altering anatomy. Not yet. Maybe he will. I don't know. He's still doing his thing. But he's in the same conversation. Why? Because he has his own tricks, his own things that he did, his own well of resources to rely upon. In this particular case, notice that every single panel, without doubt, some are more evident and obvious than others. Some characters will be drawn very plain, right? Not a lot of detail will be drawn in there, almost as if he got lazy with certain characters, their faces and whatnot. I mean, we can see in here that the man knows. Come on, let's find us a good. Here's a good one. Look at some of the faces in here, the detail in here. But then we'll see like Havoc, and it's like, very plain for the most part. God, I could stare at the art in this book all day. Certain characters will be drawn very plain, while other characters in the very same panel will be drawn with more detail. Sometimes those characters will switch. That character was just drawn in extensive detail in the previous panel, will be drawn basically in this, very basically in the next panel. It's strange, right? Until you realize, I think, maybe I'm just reading into this too much, what he's actually doing. He's forcing our focus into what matters in the panel. Because there's always background. And it's funny, the Golden Age artists at Marvel, at the very least, I don't know about DC, but probably, the Golden Age artists in DC used to actually have background artists who would come in and just draw a little background or whatever. Because if they didn't have a background artist, they would just draw the background, or they would just color in the background like Matt Green or something. So they didn't care. They really didn't. It was just the idea of, what's up front is the only thing that's important. Scovia is like, no. Everything in the comic book is going to be important, but some things are more important than others. And when he draws something or someone without a lot of detail, it's almost like he's drawing them out of focus. So your eye is forced to focus on the most important part of the action in the comic book. Again, referring back to, what do you call it? Dr. Octopus having a spider tracer attached to him. I didn't even notice as a 5 to 7 year old. And obviously Dr. Octopus didn't either. But it's brought back to our attention later because a lot of DC readers weren't reading Spider-Man, so it was important to show some of these things that Spider-Man is capable of, because Spider-Man has no chance against Superman, right? Right. Venom does, apparently. Spider-Man doesn't. If you're sleeping on Segovia's art, as it turns out I was, I think it's time to wake up. Start recognizing what this man is capable of, because holy crap. You look at the art in this book and it's just you need to pay attention to it. You need to pay attention to what this man is capable of doing. How he's forcing us to look at what he wants us to look at, right? I hope that Wells recognizes what this man is capable of. I think he does, because it seems like he's using it. You know what I'm saying? This comic book, Hellions, is a book where what you see is maybe not what's actually happening, but you can see what's actually happening if you're paying attention. And it's not just in the art, it's not just in the words, it's in the story as a whole. So I feel like these two are a dynamic couple. Wells and Scovia are a dynamic couple, and it's solid, dude. Like, it is solid. If I had to talk about David Curiel, which I don't have a problem doing it, I want to focus on the idea that he knows when to use his colors and when not to, when to just allow the inks to dominate itself, because he could add to some of these things, and it's not like he's necessarily being lazy here. You know what I'm saying? He knows what to color to actually bring highlights. It's not just the shading here. And this is something that I've said a lot about certain colorists, and Curiel is quickly getting on my radar more and more with this comic book specifically, seeing the highlights, seeing the definition of characters, and really bringing that 3D reality to life in the book, you know? At the end of the day, I'm gonna make hopefully an interesting comparison. Think about Neil Peart. Think about who's the drummer for Rush, and think about David Gilmour, the guitarist for Pink Floyd. They're both recognized as being amazing, amazing musicians, even though the layman, the average person who just comes up and just goes, "Oh, let me listen," and I'm gonna focus more on David Gilmour in this particular case. Pink Floyd is one of those bands where you're not going to find too many guitar solos. If you do, it's like, "Oh, wow, impressive." But that's usually in their later years. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the earlier stuff, that's not what David Gilmour was about. He's less of a guitarist and more of a composer. Does that mean that he wasn't a great guitarist? No, he's one of the best guitarists out there. And it's because he knows how to do the dive bomb effects and all the great things that, like a Jimmy Page or a Jimi Hendrix or an Eric Clapton or a Jeff Beck, all these guys are capable of doing. He can do all of those things, but he chose not to, because he was more focused on the song instead of himself. Jimmy Page had Robert Plant to stifle him a little bit, and it worked. It definitely worked. You know what I'm saying? Plant's ego was able to keep Jimmy Page's skill in check, right? So that we can all see that Jimmy was amazing, and like, dude, this guy could do nothing wrong. Like, look at all the things he was able to do. But Robert was always there as like, look at me also, which actually brought a much needed balance and made Led Zeppelin one of the best bands out there. David Gilmour, more than anybody else, I think, in the band, in Pink Floyd, recognized how to be the ultimate composer for these songs. That's not a crush on Roger Waters or anybody else in the band. It's in the group. It's more of a group than a band, but whatever. You could have a Pink Floyd song where there'd be a single guitar strum, much like Gene Simmons would say with Kiss. Hey, it's not about those are the guys, get off the stage. You're too good for this group. We don't want you here. Get out. For the band. That's a band. But if you could just go up there and just, do a single guitar lick and just, and look good doing it, oh, you're in. You know what I'm saying? You're in. With David Gilmour, he had the ability to, it's like, here's a guitar strum, and let it play exactly as long as it needed to play, and fade as it needed to fade, and give depth to that sound. And then let's have like 2 drum beats. And do it again. And he knew when to bring in more guitar, less. He knew how to compose himself as opposed to play his instrument, to just play his instrument. And that's one of the things that music aficionados and appreciatists can see in a David Gilmour. And that's kind of how I'm looking at David Curiel in this. He's not trying to shine in any single moment in this comic book, but he's a presence, and he's like it's hard to say because he's just a colorist, right? I would love to see more of his actual artwork coming forward. Yeah, because much like a Federico Blee, the guy has the ability to draw. He's not just a colorist. He has the ability to do this other artwork. But he's more focused on bringing the comic book to life and less about, hey man, let me kick some butt and, show them how good I am. He's showing how good he is by focusing more on the comic book and less on, boom. Not an easy thing to do, especially with colors, because, I mean, for the love of God, it's just colors, right? Just fill in the parts. We're focused on the pencils and maybe the inks, the finishes. Like, colors are just colors. No, not with Curiel. I'm focusing a lot on him on this particular issue because I don't want to always extend a review for a colorist. But I do feel that this man does need to be recognized in here. Excellent use of colors. Wow, this is banging. Yeah, that's pretty much it as far as this comic is concerned, guys. This book, just every single thing about this book, this just had me going from the word get, from the get-go. It had me going from the get. Definitely get this comic book. Put this in your bin. Please make sure that this comic book continues, because wow, this is easily one of the best comic books that Marvel is producing. So obviously it's one of the best. I honestly, I don't know if there's anybody out there who actually doesn't like the Hellions. It's a possibility. I mean, tastes vary, right? But while there's some people who are like, Marauders is the best comic book, in the entire thing. No, it's the worst comic book in the entire thing. Me, I'm of the opinion that Excalibur is the worst comic book that the X books are producing. There's other people who turn around and are like, no, it's the best one that's being produced, because tastes vary and they're all valid. But I don't hear from too many people. I don't think I've heard from anybody who said, yeah, Hellions is a crap book. Maybe it passed my notice. I don't know, but damn, this is good. It's good enough that I'm willing to put 33 minutes into a review of this book, right? Guys, like the video, watch an ad, and I'll talk to all you guys later. Make sure you get your hands on these books. Read these books. The first trade paperback should be out by now. Definitely read these stories because they're amazing. And no, I don't feel as though you have to read any of the other X books in order to understand what's necessarily happening here, with the exception maybe of the Hoxpox. You know what I'm saying? But I think you could even possibly forgo those and just ask a friend, phone a friend, and you'll be able to follow along just fine. I'll talk to all you guys later. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.